In November 2008, Karlie Pearce-Stevenson, a vibrant young woman, suddenly left Alice Springs with her 2-year-old daughter, Canderlease, and her then-boyfriend, Daniel Holdom, in search of work and a better life. She left her loved ones with little answers, and when they could no longer reach her and her daughter, concerned for their safety, they filed a missing persons report. 2 years later, Karlie's remains were devastatingly found in the Belanglo State Forest in New South Wales, but with no knowledge that this Jane Doe was actually Karlie, the case went cold. 5 years later, another harrowing discovery was made 1,200 kilometers away, when the remains of a young child were found inside a suitcase. With this new discovery, investigators jumped straight into action, and both bodies were quickly linked and confirmed as those of Karlie Pearce-Stevenson and Canderlease Pearce.
I can now confirm that the remains were identified last week as Karlie Jade Pearce-Stevenson. In July 2015, South Australia Police established Task Force Mallee following the discovery of skeletal remains of a child in a suitcase. With the assistance of government agencies, the remains have been identified as Canderlease Kiara Pearce, and a DNA comparison confirms that Karlie is her mother.
How had this mother and her precious child died? And why were they found 1,200 kilometers from one another? Where was Karlie's boyfriend, Daniel Holdom? Was he also dead? Or was he really the one behind their murders? In the early afternoon of the 29th of August 2010, in Belanglo State Forest, New South Wales, a group of trail drivers passing through the forest came across a grim discovery. After trailing deep into the bushes, they stumbled upon scattered skeletal remains, so they immediately phoned the police, who quickly arrived and cornered off the site. The police found a woman's skull, her bones, a sock, an earring, and a decomposed t-shirt with the words "Angelic" on it, and thus this Jane Doe quickly became known as the Angel of Belanglo. The police opened up an investigation, hoping to discover who this mystery woman was and how her remains had gotten there. Apart from her t-shirt, all that was known about the victim was that she was female, and a forensic examination showed that the victim had been killed by someone stomping on her neck or chest. The Belanglo State Forest in New South Wales had an infamous reputation as the burial ground for serial killer Ivan Milat, causing many to believe that maybe the Angel of Belanglo was one of his victims. The forensic examination, however, showed that the body had been left there many years after he had been sent to jail in 1996 for the 7 murders he had committed in the forest, so he was therefore ruled out as the murderer. With the little information they had about the victim, the police made an appeal to the public, asking anyone with information about the mysterious Angel of Belanglo to come forward. But with little response from the public and no knowledge of her identity, the investigation went on for several years. That was, until another body was found, 5 years later, 1,200 kilometers away. On the 14th of July 2015, on a highway in Murray Mallee in South Australia, a passing motorist saw something strange, an abandoned Lanza suitcase on the side of the road. Curious about how it had gotten there, or who it might belong to, the passing motorist stopped to take a closer look. To his utmost horror, inside the suitcase, he found the remains of a young girl, along with her clothing and a handmade quilt. Terrified by what he had seen, the motorist looked around, and behind an old tree, he saw more clothing, matching the ones he had seen in the suitcase. Immediately, he rushed to his car and drove off, reporting his discovery to the police. On arriving at the scene, the police excavated the area and searched for more clues. On closer inspection, they noticed that the child's skeleton had been wrapped in a blood-stained towel, a dishwashing cloth had been placed inside her mouth, and a nappy over her head, secured with duct tape. Following the discovery, the police attempted to identify the little girl found in the suitcase. Detectives believed that the child had been between 2 to 4 years old at the time of her death, having been killed up to 7 years earlier at another location. The police believed that the suitcase had then been dumped behind the tree in either late March or early April 2015 and then dragged closer to the highway. Forensic examination proved that the child had died from suffocation, but they failed to identify the young girl. Over the next few months, the police conducted an extensive investigation, going door to door, broadcasting, and putting up posters appealing to the public for information concerning the girl. They also used a picture of the handmade quilt found in the suitcase, asking that if anyone recognized it, to call Crime Stoppers or to report directly to the police. Following the appeal, several calls came in from people offering different options and information on the possible identity of the young girl, but sadly, no leads went anywhere. However, finally, on the 8th of October 2015, a woman called Tanya Weber, the 1267th caller to Crime Stopper, told the detectives that the clothing in the pictures looked familiar. While watching the news about the child found in a suitcase, she had recognized the pink coat with faux fur around the collar, as well as the purple silk boxer shorts. She said that she had seen them on her friend's daughter, Canderlease, who she believed was missing alongside her mother, Karlie. Tanya also added that she had neither spoken to Karlie nor seen her or Canderlease since they had left Alice Springs back in 2008. Tanya said, "Karlie used to dress candles in boxer shorts when she was hot. She'd run around with them over her nappy." Another person also reported to the detectives that they had seen Karlie and Canderlease at the Marion Shopping Centre in November 2008 in Adelaide, where she had photographed Canderlease wearing the pink dress found in the Lanza suitcase. The police also got a hit on the handmade quilt, and it was successfully traced to a store that provided records that it was bought by Colleen Povey, Karlie's mother. The police also found out that the last time Canderlease had been vaccinated was when she was 18 months old, and she had no further medical records, as well as no documentation of her ever being enrolled in a school. To confirm the possibility that the victim could be Canderlease, law enforcement attempted to reach out to her mother Karlie in order to find out the whereabouts of her daughter. But when all attempts to reach Karlie Pearce-Stevenson failed, the police's suspicion deepened, so they set out to conduct DNA testing on the remains and the clothing, using a blood sample from her medical records. The DNA report finally revealed that the little girl found inside the suitcase was indeed Khandalyce Pearce. After discovering the identity of the little girl, the police wondered why no missing report was ever made from Karlie Pearce about her daughter. After looking at the theory that Karlie could also be missing or even deceased, they looked through possible Jane Doe victims, and one in particular stood out to them. Suspecting that the remains found 5 years ago in the remote area of the Belanglo State Forest could be Karlie, a DNA test was conducted and there was a match. The Angel of Belanglo was indeed Karlie Pearce-Stevenson. With this new discovery, the police spent the next few months investigating and conducting interviews, trying to find out who had killed them. Karlie Jade Pearce-Stevenson was a 20-year-old single mum born on the 7th of August 1988 in Alice Springs in Australia. Growing up, her parents, Colleen Povey and Bruce Pearce, separated, but her mother remarried her stepfather, Scott Povey. Karlie grew up in Alice Springs with her mother most of her life, but had always wanted to leave Alice Springs in search of a better life. Like every other typical teenager, she had arguments with her parents, but despite this, Karlie was surrounded by a loving family, having both extended family and friends around. At age 18, Karlie fell pregnant, and on the 19th of June 2006, she gave birth to her daughter Canderlease. Canderlease's birth father, Andrew, however, was absent in her life due to several disagreements between Karlie and Andrew. Despite Andrew not being present, Karlie was the best mother to Canderlease, and she absolutely adored her daughter. Karlie's family and friends described Karlie as a promising, beautiful young lady and a great mum with a heart of gold and a headstrong and beautiful personality. Karlie was often referred to as a pocket rocket and a lover of adventures and someone who wished for a better life. Her cousin said, "She was a great mum right from the very beginning. She loved Canderlease as soon as she was born. She was like, "Look at this beautiful baby. This is my baby. I did this." And she had a heart of gold. Her second cousin said, "They were beautiful." Her ex-boyfriend described her as an awesome chick who was always bright, bubbly, funny, cheeky and beautiful. 2.5-year-old Canderlease was just like her mum. She was an energetic, happy and a fascinating baby. Things were going well for Karlie, and she was excited for her future and her new role as a mother. That was until she met a man who would change her life forever. Around September 2008, Karlie started dating a man called Daniel James Holdom. She had fallen deeply for his bad boy aura and loved the adventures she imagined having with him. Daniel Holdom was a 38-year-old man with a criminal history, and he was an alleged drug runner with a very dark past. Earlier that month, Daniel had been involved in a car accident with his ex-girlfriend, Hazel Passmore. Daniel had been behind the wheel when the car crashed, and the crash led to Hazel Passmore losing both her legs, as well as killing both her children, 9-year-old Willow and 6-year-old Ryan. Whilst Hazel was recovering and grieving in hospital following the crash, Daniel started a romantic relationship with Karlie Pearce. 2 months into their relationship, Karlie decided to leave Alice Springs with her daughter Canderlease and her boyfriend Daniel Holdom. Being a single mother hadn't always been easy for Karlie, but she loved her daughter and had always tried her best to give her the life she had always dreamt of. However, getting a good job was more challenging than she imagined. She had always wanted to leave Alice Springs to experience the feel and thrill of a new environment. Meeting Daniel, it felt like all her dreams of exploring the world could come true, as he also wanted to live elsewhere, so this was the perfect time to embark on a new adventure. And so they left Alice Springs in November 2008, and they moved from place to place, stopping at Darwin, Adelaide, the Murray and Riverland districts, Victoria and Canberra. But despite all efforts to get a good-paying job, she found none. Worse, Daniel had started acting strange and different. She wondered if she should return home or continue staying in Canberra. Confused and sad, she called her friend Tanya, crying on the phone, telling her about what was going on with Daniel and wondering whether she should come home or not. Tanya offered to pay for her flights back to Alice Springs, but Karlie refused. But after chatting and confiding in her friend, Karlie sounded a lot happier, and she ended the call in a happy tone. But a few days later, Karlie and Canderlease disappeared, and they were never seen alive again. With the positive breakthrough of identifying both bodies, an investigation into the last known whereabouts of the duo began. Law enforcement discovered that the last time the Pearce family had seen Karlie and Canderlease was in 2008, and that she had supposedly left Alice Springs with her boyfriend Daniel Holdom. Police officers had also sighted them driving down the Stewart Highway near Coober Pedy in South Australia on the 8th of November 2008. The police also found out that shortly after leaving Alice Springs, Karlie had stopped contacting her family, so her family had reported her missing to the Northern Territory Police on the 4th of September 2009. It was also discovered that 6 days after the missing report was made, her family had withdrawn the reports after receiving messages from Karlie's cell phone which claimed she was well and alive, but did not want her family to contact her. They also found out that in 2010 and 2011, Karlie had allegedly reached out to her family several times, requesting money, and despite her family sending her the requested money, she never came home, and this infuriated them. After initially texting her family, letting them know she was living in Noosa Heads but needed money, she then contacted them again from Queensland, saying she was in Mount Isa and needed money to return home. Her mother, Colleen, always honoured Karlie's money requests and deposited the money into her bank account, hoping each time that they would return home, but Karlie never did. When Colleen became very sick with cancer, Karlie's family tried to contact Karlie, telling her to come home and to be there for her mother's last moments. But sadly, Colleen passed away in February 2012 without seeing her daughter and granddaughter one final time, and Karlie was also not present for the burial. Following all this new information, police then decided to interview Daniel Holdom to understand what had really happened in 2008. According to the details of his interview, he said he had kissed Karlie and Canderlease goodbye before leaving them at a motel, as he had decided to get back with his ex-girlfriend, Hazel Passmore. He said that he had never seen them again, but had exchanged text messages with Karlie at some point. Later in his questioning, he changed his initial statement, saying that he had seen her once again in Adelaide the following year, and that she had told him she was living in the city and was going back to Queensland or Alice Springs with, as she allegedly said, a couple of boys she had been talking to. With this inconsistency, the police felt uneasy about Daniel Holdom, and he was quickly made the prime suspect, since he was the last person to have seen Karlie alive. But they needed more evidence to convict him, so they continued searching deeper. As they conducted more interviews and investigations, they discovered that Karlie's bank account had been accessed several times after she was last seen in December 2008. The police also found out that a woman in a wheelchair had impersonated Karlie in June 2010 at a credit union using her identity documents. This woman was accompanied by a man who is believed to be none other than Daniel Holdom. Karlie's account was accessed in at least 4 different jurisdictions, and a total of over $70,000 had been stolen over the years. Looking further into this fraud, they quickly discovered that the woman in the wheelchair was none other than Daniel Holdom's girlfriend, Hazel Passmore, the woman who had been involved in a car accident in which Daniel was the driver, so they called her in for an interview. Realizing she had been caught red-handed, Hazel decided to provide the police with vital information in exchange for a non-conviction for being a part of the fraud. Hazel said that she had found some personal documents belonging to Karlie and Canderlease in Daniel's possession, and that she had then accused him of cheating on her. Hazel said that while yelling at him for cheating, he had shaken her and told her he had killed Karlie and Canderlease back in 2008. She said, "I was yelling and screaming, 'What the fuck is this?' I was going off my nut, and he pulled me inside, literally by the scruff of the neck. He threw the chair, he starts shaking me, and he's like, 'She's disappeared, she's gone, she's gone.' And I'm like, 'What do you mean she's gone?' And he's like, 'She's dead, she's dead.'" Hazel revealed that she had also stumbled upon an SD card belonging to Daniel Holdom containing gruesome pictures of the lifeless bodies of Karlie and Canderlease. She said that she was scared to be next, so she kept the SD card with her sister. She also added that Daniel had always harbored ill sexual fantasies about child abuse. He would always ask her about her abuse as a child and was intrigued by it. Further investigation into Daniel Holdom also revealed that he was a serial offender and had been convicted of similar crimes relating to sexual abuse and violence. A cell tower signal also identified that Daniel Holdom had been in the Belanglo Forest at the time of Karlie's death. Further evidence showed that a few days after Karlie disappeared, Daniel Holdom had cleaned the car out, trading it for another, and had told his housemate he was taking Canderlease to her grandmother as Karlie had left. He had also checked into a motel with Canderlease, but had checked out without her. Following the investigation and the evidence against Daniel Holdom, the police set out to arrest him, but he was already in jail for sexually assaulting a 9-year-old girl. So on the 28th of October 2015, Daniel Holdom was arrested and charged with the murder of Karlie Pearce-Stevenson. 2 months later, on the 15th of December 2015, he was rearrested and charged with the murder of Canderlease Pearce after a thorough and comprehensive investigation proved that he was also a prime suspect in her murder. According to what Daniel Holdom had confessed to his girlfriend, Hazel Passmore, the police were able to piece together what they believed really happened to Karlie and Canderlease. It's believed that on the evening of the 14th of December 2008, Karlie and Daniel had gotten into yet another disagreement while staying at their Canberra apartment, which they shared with other housemates. Some minutes into the argument, they left in Karlie's car and Daniel took the wheel. He led them to the infamous Belanglo Forest and then got out the car. Confused about why Daniel had chosen that location, Karlie refused to follow him, but he dragged her inside the forest and then sexually assaulted her with a bottle. As she struggled to be free of his grip, he overpowered her, pushing her onto the ground and stomping on her neck and chest, causing her to die almost instantly. He then proceeded to take several photos of her body. He then returned to their Canberra property alone, where he told his housemates that he was taking Canderlease to her grandmother since Karlie had left. Daniel then cleaned Karlie's car, and a few days later he traded it for another. He also went to a store where he bought duct tape before checking into a motel in Canberra with Canderlease. A few days later, on the 19th of December 2008, Daniel suffocated 2-year-old Canderlease in the motel room using duct tape, dishwashing cloths, and a towel from the hotel. Hazel Passmore claimed that Daniel confessed to sexually abusing Canderlease's body before putting her in a suitcase and then dumping her on the side of a remote highway in South Australia, 1,200 kilometres from where her mother was killed and dumped. After not hearing from Karlie for a while, Karlie's mother, Colleen, filed a missing person report, but it was withdrawn once her family received a text message from her phone saying she wasn't missing but didn't want family contact. This was not Karlie, however, as unbeknownst to her family, Karlie was already dead. Daniel was using her mobile phone to create false indications that she and Canderlease were alive. As years passed, Karlie's mother kept sending her money, but this was going directly to Daniel and Hazel. They continued to take advantage of Karlie and her family, stealing more than $70,000 from Karlie's accounts. That was until Daniel Holdom was finally arrested and charged with their murders. Daniel Holdom's trial was held on Friday, the 28th of September 2018, at the New South Wales Supreme Court, where he was scheduled to face Karlie's family. Opening the trial, prosecutors called for 2 life sentences following his guilty plea. They brought up how Daniel Holdom had provided inconsistent answers when asked about the last known whereabouts of Karlie and Canderlease. They described how Daniel Holdom had sexually abused Karlie with a bottle before stomping and fracturing her neck and facial bones and going on to sexually assault Canderlease. They said, however, that they could not forensically prove the extent to which the sexual assault was completed due to the deteriorated state of the remains when found. Crown Prosecutor Mark Tedeschi explained how 2 pieces of dishwashing cloth had been found inside of Canderlease's mouth, while duct tape was wrapped around her head and a bloody disposable nappy and towel. He added, "The exact circumstances of Canderlease's death remain unknown, but there can be no doubt her last moments must have been horrific." Evidence was presented to the court about a sexually depraved notebook Daniel Holdom kept, in which he wrote children's names, and next to them he wrote down either the word consented, raped, or forced. They also showed an SD card with evidence of pictures taken after he had murdered both of them. Further evidence provided showed how a cell signal from Daniel Holdom's phone showed that he was at the Belanglo Forest at the time of Karlie's death. There was also testimonial evidence from Hazel Passmore, the then girlfriend of Daniel Holdom, who confirmed that Daniel had confessed to her. Hazel also provided evidence of their fraudulent claims on Karlie's bank accounts, in which she had impersonated Karlie to aid Daniel Holdom in stealing over $70,000 from Karlie's accounts. Hazel also confessed to the police that Daniel Holdom had sent messages to Karlie's family and friends, reassuring them that she was okay and safe, but did not want family contact. They said that there was a sexual motive in the murder of Canderlease, and that Daniel was at least attempting to, or planning to, sexually assault her at the time of her death. His intention to assault Canderlease motivated him to kill her mother, Karlie, who would have protected her daughter. Other motives suggested sexual desires towards Karlie herself, financial gain, and a thrill kill as described by the prosecutor, as Daniel Holdom had kept trophy pictures of his depraved activities. Crown Prosecutor Mark Tedeschi said, Karlie's murder was motivated by a number of factors, which included in order to gain access to her young daughter, in whom the offender already expressed sexual interest. Pleading for 2 life sentences, he said, Both murders fall within the worst case and can aptly be described as atrocious, detestable, hateful, gravely reprehensible, and extremely wicked, though the prosecution did acknowledge evidence that Daniel had suffered serious and ongoing abuse as a child. They argued that it did not discount the seriousness of the crimes. Karlie's family also delivered heart-wrenching victim impact statements directed to an emotionless Daniel Holdom, who sat in the dock with his arms crossed. Her father, Bruce Pearce, in a statement read by her aunt, Kelly Lilly, said that the hate he has felt since their murder was all-consuming. He said, "I have never hated anyone the way that I hate you. The thoughts of what the girls went through, the anger I feel turns to physical pain. It hurts to breathe. I would like to see the death penalty for you, but even that would not be enough. I wake from nightmares with the fear that you will get away with what you've done. The one question that I want you to answer for me is a simple one. Why?" Karlie's stepfather, Scott Povey, told the jury how Karlie's mother, Colleen, had died in 2012 of breast cancer, without knowing that Karlie had indeed been murdered after being reassured she was doing well and living interstate. Before her death, she had asked if Karlie and Canderlease, as she was affectionately called, had returned home. Heartbroken that they didn't return, she died thinking that they were alive and had chosen not to visit her in her dying bed. Bruce said, her very last distinguishable sentence was, "Are Karlie and Canderlease here yet? I was holding her hand when she died, and I knew that Karlie was not coming." Finally, on the 30th of November 2018, Daniel Holdom, who was facing the guilty verdict following his guilty plea, at the last minute attempted to withdraw his guilty plea. His lawyer argued that his client, Daniel, had trouble digesting the case briefing against him before accepting the plea. Rejecting the application, Justice Robert Hume noted that Daniel Holdom had an experienced legal team and was duly informed of the briefing. Hence, he was not satisfied that Daniel had not understood what he had been pleading to. While delivering the sentencing in a speech, Justice Robert Hume remarked, "The offender, for at least for the foreseeable future, represents a danger to society."
His treatment of her showed complete disdain for her existence as a human being. To him, she was just flesh with a life that could be extinguished for his vile pleasure. He is also at the top of the range of objective seriousness. That is so, even if only on the bare fact that the victim was a completely defenceless 2-year-old who was intentionally killed, with some forethought, by being suffocated and stuffed in a suitcase and dumped. Adding to this the sexual assault element only makes it the more despicable.
He labelled the murder as one of extreme gravity and appalling depravity. And finally, Daniel Holdom was sentenced to 2 life imprisonment sentences.
Daniel Holdom will die behind bars for the murders of his ex-girlfriend Karlie Pearce-Stevenson and her daughter Canderlease in 2008.
Despite this sentencing, Daniel Holdom stood unshaken and unremorseful about his heinous crime before he was eventually led out of the court. The world was gladdened by the sentencing awarded to Daniel Holdom as a resounding applause was given from the public stage in the court following the verdict.
I'd like to acknowledge the family of Karlie and Canderlease. They have been stalwarts for the last 10 years. They have suffered enormously for the past 10 years. They have always conducted themselves with dignity and they have always assisted the police in the investigation, and I'd like to congratulate them on that.
Karlie's family remarked that no sentence could ever bring closure, but that they were, however, thankful to the New South Wales Department of Justice and police teams for bringing them justice, and were also happy that the outside world would be freed of this depraved monster. They also thanked the South Australia Commissioner for Victims' Rights, especially noting that former Commissioner Michael O'Connell was instrumental in helping them during these trying times. In a release statement, they said, "Michael O'Connell, the former commissioner, who treated us decently, but most important, he ensured Karlie and Canderlease were returned to us with respect and dignity. He gave us a voice. His compassionate support for us and our friends, whenever we needed it, has been unwavering throughout, and he continues to do so." Speaking on the case in an interview with 60 Minutes Australia, former Commissioner Michael O'Connell, in an almost teary state, expressed his sadness for the case, saying it was one of the saddest cases he had ever experienced. Meanwhile, the South Australian police were grateful to Tanya Webber for her help in cracking the case. They acknowledged that she was the breakthrough they needed to identify the victims, and such aiding in bringing the sadistic monster to justice. The Pearce family expressed their disappointment in themselves for assuming that Karlie had been well and had chosen not to contact the family. They also urged people in their release statement to hold and cherish their loved ones while alive, adding, "The best we can say to the mums and dads, grandparents, brothers and sisters, hold your loved ones close and hold them tight and never stop hugging them." Back in 2015, once both bodies had been identified as Karlie and Canderlease Pearce, a funeral service was conducted at a church in Alice Springs for both mother and daughter, and they were buried beside Karlie's mother, Colleen Povey. The family released a statement during her church funeral saying Karlie was remembered as a cheeky, kind and loyal young woman who was always there to support family. They added that Canderlease and her mother Karlie was always there, front and centre, and that the pair were facing the world with all its charms, persuasions and pitfalls. Canderlease did not deserve a death so harrowing. She was an innocent young girl who deserved to live and explore the good things in life without suffering from this evil man's choices and dark desires. Karlie too just wanted to be loved, cared for, and have a better life than what Daniel Holdom had destined for her. It's sickening to imagine the terrifying last minutes of their lives as they suffered a fate so sinister and violent by this evil monster. No one deserves to die in that manner, and my heart goes out to their family, friends and loved ones. I hope that the punishment administered to Daniel Holdom gives them some sort of closure, and as always, rest in peace, Karlie and Canderlease.